Why can't I see it though? Oh, that would be why. Hi guys, it's Morgan from Manic Mama Mo. I've been making crochet content over on Instagram for a couple of years now, and at the beginning of this year, I launched my blog, manicmamamo.com, where I just post things like whips, yarn and pattern reviews, missions I've taken, my crochet club, whatever I feel like talking about on any given day. And while that's been a kind of a fun venture for me, I really have been feeling inspired by a lot of different crochet and knitting YouTube creators. And I just felt like that was the next step that I wanted to take in my crochet or just general crafts journey. So that's basically why I'm here. I can't talk about myself for an entire intro video. I got like 2 minutes tops. So that's what we're gonna get into right now. So just a little bit about me personally. I'm a 28-year-old former middle school English teacher turned stay-at-home mom. Me and my husband Andy have 3 kids together, ages 4, 3, and 2. So we definitely have our hands full over here. You'll probably hear them in the background like that. But that's just part of being a mom, I feel like. So, and that kind of leads into what you can expect from me and what you can expect from the channel. I am not one that will portray this sense of perfection because I'm a hot mess all the time. And so you're going to know that I'm a hot mess all the time. That's going to translate into my videos. It's going to translate into my work. That's the way that I like it. I think that social media forces us to portray ourselves in such a perfect fashion when really that's not the reality of life, especially art. Art is all about making mistakes, and sometimes beauty comes out of those mistakes. So I think that that's just something that I really want to embrace here, is just sometimes we mess up, sometimes we don't do things perfectly, but that doesn't mean that we're not successful. So with all of that intro out of the way, let's go ahead and jump right into talking about crochet and knitting supplies. When I cover all of these different things, I'm going to have links in the description for every single item that I talk about. I'm also going to have a beginner-friendly option and then my preferred option. The reason that I'm doing that is because when you first get into crochet or knitting, like knitting is a more recent thing for me, so my supplies are definitely beginner supplies, beginner-friendly supplies, very affordable, just because you don't want to go into a hobby spending hundreds of dollars when you don't know if you're even going to be interested in the craft. Again, I'm going to cover my preferred supplies as well as what I recommend for beginners. So to start, we're going to talk about hooks and needles. Hooks are for crochet, needles are for knitting, just in case you did not know that. I'll start with crochet because that is what I have the most level of knowledge in. The first hook I'm going to recommend is going to be the beginner friendly set from Amazon. This is what I personally started with when I started learning to crochet. I do use a different set now, which I'll get into just in a second, but these are really great and really affordable for beginners who are not sure if they really want to invest in the craft yet. There are 3 different types of hooks that I use regularly. I'm going to start with what I personally recommend, which is Clover Amour hooks. They're really great. They have a nice soft silicone grip. The yarn glides so well on them. They just are way better than the Amazon ones. The other type of hook that I most regularly use, which is my Furls Streamline metal crochet hooks. I love them. I think they're gorgeous. I think the weight is amazing on them. I love having them in my collection, but I don't necessarily recommend that anybody buy them. They're $26 a hook, which is just kind of insane to me. I got them as a gift, and I do plan on completing my set, but that's just because I crochet literally every single day. So it's just something for me that brings me joy in the craft. So it's not something that I feel like you need at all. I love having them. I don't discourage anyone from buying them. It's just that I don't want people to think that you need to have these. It's going to impact your ability to crochet. It's not. It's really not. And the last type of hook that I use regularly is the Clover Soft Touch hooks, specifically for micro crochet. So like 0.5 millimeter, 0.75 millimeter, 1 millimeter, things like that. They have a flat grip on them, and I honestly kind of like that. I don't know if it's because they're smaller hooks only. The flatness is just kind of beneficial when you're working with the smaller yarns or even threads. As far as needles go, I only have a beginner set recommendation because that is all that I have. So I do have two different types of sets of needles. The first set that I got was just a basic long needle set, which this is used for knitting anything flat. You need either double pointed needles or circular needles to achieve anything in the round. This set did come with some circular needles, but the cable is only one length, which if you're familiar with knitting in the round, you know that there's several different lengths that you might need depending on what you're making. Longer length for a blanket, shorter length for socks. That's why I got the interchangeable set, which is the second set that I have. The interchangeable set is just another basic Amazon set that I got. The problem I'm having with my interchangeable set from Amazon is the cables, even though they come with a tightener, keep coming loose. And I'll show you close up here what I mean by that, because you twist the cables into the needle and then the cable should stay secured but doesn't. That's the problem I've been having, and that can be really detrimental to your project, just because if that cable comes loose then you could drop stitches, and that's just not, in my opinion, a very fun time. I don't, again, have any recommendations for like preferred brands or more expensive. I promise I used to teach English. I promise I did. Okay, so now that we've covered hooks and needles, we're going to jump into talking about notions and supplies. A lot of these overlap for knitting and crochet. I think pretty much all of them do. Some of them are just different versions of the same items. So the first supply that we're going to talk about is stitch markers. So stitch markers are used in both knitting and crochet. There are just different types of stitch markers for each craft. For example, first here, I'll show you the crochet stitch markers. These can be used in knitting as well. The fact that these open and clasp shut is what makes them specifically for crochet, because when you are crocheting, you need to be able to put your marker into the stitch like this. And obviously you cannot, if this was a closed circle, you would not be able to pull it off of the stitch once the stitch is completed. Whereas with knitting stitch markers, you just slide them onto the needle. You use that to mark the end of round or beginning of round, or where you would need to start with a different stitch pattern, whatever the case is. That is what knitting stitch markers are for. So again, crochet stitch markers can be used in knitting, but knitting stitch markers cannot be used in crochet. I'm really wanting to get into making my own knitting stitch markers with just some gold hoops and some polymer clay charms, kind of like these ones over here from Etsy, and I'll link these down in the description as well. So maybe that's something that we'll kind of cover on this channel, is DIY stitch markers. I feel like that would be really fun. So if that's something that sounds interesting to you, I'd love if you'd follow along. Hopefully we could make that happen. Another supply that I have is darning needles. They are used primarily for weaving in ends, sewing on amigurumi pieces, sewing together seams. My personal preferred darning needle style is this first one, where it is metal with a kind of angled point on it. I like this one for crochet because I find it easier to get into my stitches with that angled tip. So that is my favorite. My second favorite is these kind of rectangular shaped ones, where they make it really easy for sewing on amigurumi pieces specifically. I just find the ability to pull the chenille yarn through them to be so much easier. But there are a few other ones in this set as well. The next couple notions are going to be specific to knitting. So this one here, I don't know what it's called. I'll put it somewhere on the screen if I can figure it out. But the purpose of these is for when you're knitting and you need to put stitches on hold. So if a pattern ever tells you to hold on to some stitches until later on in the pattern, then that's how you're going to do that, is by using one of these. The next one that's specific to knitting is these super cute needle stoppers. They're made of silicone, so that way they fit over most size needles, but you just put these over the tips of your needles and that kind of keeps that sharp edge from just being exposed. Obviously, with having 3 little ones, that is kind of important to me, just the safety aspect, but it also keeps your project on your needles, so that way your project does not slip off the tips before you want it to. Next, we have tape measures. These are really, really important if you are a maker of wearables. I have 2 different types of tape measures that I use. I use a retractable tape measure, so it pulls out like a measuring tape and you press the button and the tape measure comes back in. I like this one for just like everyday quick use, quickly measuring something, but I prefer the classic long white just tape measure because I find it easier to wrap around people when I need to do their measurements for commissioned or custom ordered pieces. So that is why I carry both of those in my collection. And the last couple things I'm going to talk about, I'm going to try to show you as best as I can, but they're kind of large and bulky. So the first thing that I have here is my blocking board. So I have 8 squares total, just so if I have a larger wearable, I can have a bigger blocking piece. So what these are used for is basically stretching your finished project into the shape that it needs to be in. Along with the blocking board would be the blocking pins. So I have 2 different styles of pins that I personally use. So for smaller items, I use these T-shaped needles. They came with the blocking board, but these are not my favorite way to pin things down, especially larger pieces like garments. So that is why I purchased these specific blocking pins. It reminds me of like those I watched way too many body cam videos. Those tire things that they throw down in the road to make people crash when they're running from the police. That's what it reminds me of. I watch body cams way too much. With that, we've covered all of our supplies that we need to start crocheting and knitting. If you think I missed anything or there's something that you think is a necessity for starting to crochet and knit that I didn't mention in this video, just leave a comment down below. I'd love to hear what you guys think of as crochet and knitting necessities, because I definitely have some that I consider necessities that I didn't mention in this video, especially like comfort pieces, like a boppy pillow for crocheting is game changing. My friend Hannah put me onto it and it is such a game changer. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'd love if you would subscribe and follow along with us for more content. I'm hoping to put up a My Favorite Yarns video next, so maybe you can check that out here in a week or so. Thank you guys so much for being here. I'm just so grateful to be starting this experience. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye.